In the humid corners of South Memphis, long before the headlines and the mugshots, there lived a man who dreamed of more. His name? Fontrell Antonio Baines. But on the street, and in the booth, he was known by a different name, Nuke Bizzle. To most, he was just another underground rapper grinding for a break. But those who really knew Nuke knew one thing: he wasn't the type to wait for life to hand him success. He was hungry, ambitious, and tired of barely scraping by. "Bro, I ain't trying to punch no clock," he once told a friend outside a liquor store on Lamar Avenue. "If the rap don't blow, I gotta find another way to stack up." He tried music first, self-released EPs, shot low-budget videos on cracked iPhones, and posted everything on YouTube, praying for that viral spark. His lyrics were raw, and his flow was decent. But in a city already crawling with talent, it wasn't enough. He needed money, and he needed it now. So, like too many men before him, Nuke started working the underground circuit. No record labels, no paperwork. Just baggies, burner phones, and fast cars. He moved weight under the radar, a self-proclaimed unlicensed pharmacist. And the money? It came fast. But so did the heat. First arrest, possession with intent to distribute. Second arrest, unlawful firearm in vehicle. Third arrest, probation violation. 3 strikes in. Every time he got out, the hustle got riskier. "That game's cursed," said his cousin Dre one night, counting money in their 2-bedroom apartment. "You either end up broke, dead, or federal property." Nuke scoffed. "You forgot rich." But deep down, even he could feel it slipping. Every close call was a reminder that he was one stop and search away from being a statistic. And then, just as things were reaching a breaking point, the world shut down. March 2020. The pandemic hit like a bat out of hell. Hospitals flooded, streets emptied, clubs closed, shows canceled, hustles slowed. People were getting laid off in droves. Landlords weren't budging. Food banks overflowed. And in the middle of that chaos, the U.S. government launched the most ambitious unemployment aid program in modern history. Billions were released through the Employment Development Department, EDD, to help struggling workers. But to Nuke Bizzle, it wasn't a lifeline. It was a gold mine. In most American homes, the pandemic brought fear, uncertainty, and a desperate need to survive. In Nuke Bizzle's world, it brought a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He was sitting on the couch, PlayStation controller in hand, scrolling through the news when he saw the headline, "Federal unemployment benefits expanded amid pandemic. Claims process streamlined online." He leaned forward, blinking. "Wait, they doing what now?" His friend Troy glanced over from the kitchen, a plate of reheated wings in hand. "They giving money out, fool, like free money. Just gotta file a claim, swear you was working, and boom, they mailin' you checks." Nuke's mind didn't just turn, it raced. This wasn't some slow hustle PPP paperwork trick. This was instant money. All you needed was an identity, an address, and a lie that looked like truth. He opened his laptop that night, fingers tapping furiously, researching how the system worked, what info they asked for, what the approval windows looked like, how long before the debit cards hit mailboxes. And just like that, a plan began to form. It started small. Nuke got his hands on one stolen identity, a guy who'd once worked in construction in California. He filled in the blanks, added a fake work history, a matching California address, and clicked submit. Boom. Approved. A green card envelope from the EDD showed up less than 2 weeks later. The money came loaded on a debit card, no questions asked, a few $1,000s just sitting there, ready to be spent. Nuke tested it. He swiped the card at a Foot Locker. Approved. He took out a few hundred in cash at an ATM. No freeze, no flags. He called Troy that night, voice trembling with excitement. "Bro, it worked. I just swiped for 4 bands on a name that don't even belong to me." Troy laughed. "That's wild." Nuke leaned back in his chair. "Nah, that's business. We about to scale this up." Within 2 months, he was running a full-blown operation. Stolen identities, fake addresses, burner phones, prepaid cards. He scoured the dark web for social security numbers, bought phishing dumps. Even recruited a few street-level scammers to provide info. Each fake identity got its own EDD application. Each application meant another debit card. And each card meant free money. Tens of thousands poured in, then hundreds. 92 different claims. Over $1.2 million stolen. At one point, his kitchen table looked like a casino vault, stacks of green EDD envelopes piled next to rows of debit cards, each one a different name, each one a loaded weapon pointed straight at the government's wallet. He withdrew over $700,000 in cold cash, most of it from ATMs across LA and Vegas. And what do you do when you're young, wild, and suddenly rich? You show off. Instagram lit up. New shoes, designer fits, custom diamond grills, thick wads of cash stuffed in his hoodie pockets like snacks. He posted videos tossing $20s in the air, letting them rain onto his marble kitchen floor. In one pic, he captioned, "From broke to blessed, don't ask how." But it wouldn't be long before he answered that question himself. Because then Nuke had an idea so bold, so reckless, so entirely 2020. He decided to rap about the whole thing. For most people, pulling off a $1.2 million scam against the US government would be the point where you lay low, disappear, stay humble, keep your head down. But Nuke Bizzle? He wasn't most people. He was a rapper first, a hustler second, and a master of self-sabotage third. "You know what'd be hard?" he said to Troy one night, eyes lit like a man who just discovered fire. "Dropping a track about all this." Troy blinked. "You talking this? Like, what you actually doing?" "Hell yeah," Nuke said, already grabbing his notebook. "Whole scheme. Lay it out, but slick." "You gon' snitch on yourself? In a song?" Nuke grinned. "Only if they listen." Within days, he had the hook. "You gotta sell cocaine?" "I just file a claim. 10 cards I'm swiping. 10K a day, it's time to ball like the NBA." He titled the track Ed, a not-so-subtle nod to the Employment Development Department he just bled dry. To make it louder, dumber, and flashier, he called up a local rapper named Fat Wizza and invited him to feature on the track. The music video shoot was pure chaos. They filmed it right in his rented apartment and on the streets of LA, wearing designer clothes, sipping from bottles, and literally holding up real EDD envelopes to the camera-like trophies of a criminal masterclass. In one scene, Nuke danced in a hallway with cash spilling out of his waistband. In another, he flashed stacks of green debit cards like trading cards. At one point, he even winked at the camera while mouthing, "I just got rich off of EDD, ain't gotta sell no D." The entire thing wasn't just self-incrimination. It was practically a federal affidavit in 4K. Still, they uploaded it to YouTube, loud, proud, untouchable. And for a moment, it worked. His fans went wild. The video racked up tens of thousands of views in days. Memes started floating around. "New hustle unlocked. Ed gang, how do I apply?" In Nuke's mind, he was a legend. But while the comments were full of fire emojis and laughing faces, one viewer wasn't laughing. Office of Inspector General, U.S. Department of Labor. Agent Rachel Fenton sat at her desk, finishing up a routine fraud case when a junior analyst knocked on her door. "You gotta see this," the kid said, holding up his phone. "Some dude just rapped about defrauding the EDD and used the real envelopes." Rachel watched the video once, then again, then paused at a frame where an envelope flashed in front of the lens clear enough to see a name and part of an address. She didn't blink. "Pull DMV records. Cross-reference identity fraud reports out of California. Get me every known alias tied to this guy's YouTube and Spotify. I want phone logs, IP traces, and surveillance footage from every ATM he's used." The junior agent stammered, "Wait, you think this is legit?" Rachel smirked. "Oh, it's legit, and this man just wrapped himself straight into federal custody." When Nuke Bizzle stood in front of the camera that afternoon, he wasn't just filming a flex. He was documenting a crime scene in real time. The shoot took place in a borrowed Airbnb, deep in the San Fernando Valley marble countertops, modern furniture, and enough space to bring the vision to life. A dozen people were on set, 2 cameramen, a freelance director, the sound tech, a stylist, and a few hanger-ons who just wanted to be part of the buzz. In the middle of the chaos stood Nuke. Chains heavy, smile wider than the day his first debit card hit. In his hand, a stack of Ed envelopes, real ones. And in his other hand, a spread of California unemployment debit cards, each tied to a different stolen identity. "This the shot," he told the director. "Right here. Frame it tight. We gon' make the government famous." "You sure you want to show the real cards, bro?" one of the crew asked, glancing nervously around. Nuke raised an eyebrow. "What, you scared?" He tossed a card in the air like a poker chip. "This ain't no fake money. This is legal tender, baby. I just know how to get it before they do." The director hesitated, then hit record. The lyrics came easy, too easy. "Ed got me living, no job, no mission. Swipe 10 bands in a day. That's efficient. No cap, no trap, just a click and a name. Why hustle crack when I could file a claim?" And he didn't stop there. He referenced the claim process, the debit cards, the withdrawals. He even mentioned specific ATM locations and the mail route timing from the California EDD. By the time the second verse came in, Fat Wizza was in frame, rapping in sync, laughing while tossing envelopes into the air like confetti. But Wizza didn't look nervous. Not even a little. Some say he didn't know. Others say he knew exactly what was happening and played his role anyway. Either way, the footage was locked. 2 days later, the video was uploaded to YouTube. Title: Ed, Nuke Bizzle feat. Fat Wizza. Within hours, it caught traction. First in the LA underground scene, then in scammer forums, then on hip-hop blogs. By day 2, it had 60,000 views. By day 5, over 200,000. Clips hit TikTok. Lyrics became captions. A new generation of benefit hustlers called it their anthem. And that's when it happened. The video caught the eye of someone very dangerous. U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Inspector General, Washington, D.C. Agent Rachel Fenton was sipping stale coffee in her office when a flagged alert popped up on her desktop. Viral music video potentially describing and displaying Ed fraud. She clicked the link. Watched once, eyes narrowed. Watched again, this time pausing at every visible name, envelope, card. She didn't just see a rapper stunting. She saw a roadmap to a federal crime. And more than that, a confession made to the beat of his own downfall. She stood up, grabbed the file, and stormed into her supervisor's office. "Sir," she said, holding up a screenshot, "we got a problem, and he's already told us everything we need to know." He pressed upload. She pulled the trigger. By 9:03 a.m. that morning, Agent Rachel Fenton had already issued an internal alert titled, "Potential high-value fraud subject identified via public confession." The YouTube link to Ed was included in the body. Beneath it, a frame of Nuke Bizzle holding up 3 California Employment Development Department envelopes each, one zoomed, analyzed, and logged for legibility. One name was half exposed. One address was clear. That was all she needed. Rachel had been chasing post-COVID fraudsters for over a year, PPP loan scammers, fake mask manufacturers, bogus testing sites, but this was different. This wasn't someone hiding behind a stolen EIN and a P.O. box. This was a man rapping, on beat, about how he scammed the government out of 7 figures with props. And now, he was viral. By noon, she was coordinating with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the Secret Service, and the DOJ's COVID-19 Fraud Task Force. "Let's be clear," she told the assembled team via Zoom. "He's showing government-issued debit cards with names. Some of those names match known identity theft reports from the California EDD database. He doesn't just match the profile that built it." They opened a case file. Case name, Operation Rap Claim. Target, Fontrell Antonio Baines, a.k.a. Nuke Bizzle. Charges under review: mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, possession of stolen government property, conspiracy to defraud the United States. By the time she closed her laptop, the chase had begun. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Nuke had no idea he'd just declared war on the federal government. He was back in the booth working on a follow-up track. Something bouncier, less obvious. Maybe even a part 2. Ed reloaded, he joked to his engineer. But something was shifting. People were starting to look at him differently. One of his boys pulled him aside outside the liquor store. "Yo, you seen the Twitter threads? They say the Fed's watching. That video got posted on ScamWatch and Gov Fraud Alert. You hot." Nuke laughed. "Good. Hot means relevant." "I'm serious," the guy said. "They talking about investigating social media clout scammers. They said your name directly, bro." Nuke waved it off. "They talkin'. But they ain't moving. I'm good." But for the first time, he checked over his shoulder walking back to the car. 3 days later, Washington, D.C. Fenton stood at a whiteboard. Behind her were pinned printouts of Instagram photos, ATM withdrawal logs, street cam screenshots of Bizzle outside Bank of America machines, and call logs traced from his burner phones. Her voice was cold, precise. This is how he did it. 92 fake Ed claims, spread across stolen identities from California, routed to fake addresses tied to mail, forwarding boxes or drop spots. The cards were issued loaded with $12 K to $20 K each and withdrawn in LA, Vegas, and Bakersfield. She paused, clicked the remote. The projector displayed a shot of Nuke in the video, holding 3 cards in one hand, smirking. "And here's how we catch him. He filmed the evidence for us." Langston, the Secret Service rep, chuckled. "We're gonna arrest a guy because he made a music video?" Fenton snapped back without hesitation. "We're arresting him because he explained the crime better than our best analysts ever could." They subpoenaed YouTube for metadata. They cross-referenced his IP with his Spotify login. They followed the trail from his burner numbers to the Airbnb he used to film the video. And then, they got a hit. One of the EDD cards shown in the video had been registered to a woman in Fresno. She'd reported identity theft 2 months earlier and listed an address that matched a known mail forwarding location Nuke used. That was the thread. They pulled it hard. 2 weeks later, federal agents had a complete list of his aliases, ATM locations, vehicle rentals, and known associates. A decision was made. They would take him quietly, but only after watching one final thing. Agent Fenton pulled up his latest Instagram post. Nuke stood in a parking lot next to a rented BMW, grinning. In his hand, a fan of crisp 20s. In his caption, 10 cards, 10 ways. Still active, still blessed. She turned to her team. "Book him." At this point, Nuke Bizzle had crossed a line that most scammers fear but few see coming. He had gone from quietly gaming the system to becoming a public enemy with a viral hook. He wasn't just being investigated, he was being monitored. In silence. With precision. And across 3 states. Federal surveillance order. Initiated. Rachel Fenton's team was now running a coordinated tail across Los Angeles, where Nuke lived and shot the music video. Las Vegas, where he liked to party and withdraw cash. Memphis, Tennessee, his hometown, where he sometimes sent people to pick up drop mail or help cash out. Agents were authorized to follow his movements using everything from public street cams to mobile sting ops. His phones, both burner and real, were being pinged. ATM cameras flagged every time he withdrew money. His social media was being scraped in real time by AI tools trained to detect fraud keywords. He had no idea. Meanwhile, Nuke was growing cockier. The EDD video had just passed 500,000 views. He booked a few studio features. He started negotiating with a small-time LA manager who thought he could turn Nuke into the next viral-to-real story. "He's like 2020's Bobby Shmurda," the manager said to a promoter, "but smarter, no priors stickin'." "Yeah, about that." The 9th of March, 2021, 11:13 a.m., Los Angeles. At a corner table in a quiet Koreatown cafe, 2 plainclothes agents sat parked across the street from a check-cashing store. Inside? Nuke, wearing a black hoodie, sunglasses, and quietly sliding an EDD debit card into the cash-out terminal. "Got him again," one agent said into his collar mic. Card name, Roderick Miles. One of our flagged identities. Confirmed withdrawal, $980. An unmarked surveillance van 3 blocks away logged the transaction live. This wasn't just a paper trail anymore. It was a digital cage. That same night, Nuke posted a video on his Instagram story. Camera. Nuke flashing money, sitting on the hood of a rental. I ain't even dropped a reel tape yet, and look at me. Man, this rap thing different. In the background, a gas station. Feds used the pump number to verify his GPS location. The 10th of March, Las Vegas. Nuke and his friend Troy hit the I-15 north, blasting music, heading for a weekend in Sin City. The Escalade was rented under a fake alias, but the GPS tracker inside, very real. The rental company had already complied with a federal request to share location pings. Rachel Fenton was 2 steps ahead. Let him land, she told Langston. We catch him in possession, with the cards, with the cash, with no excuse. Langston leaned against the command room map. We just wait? No, she said. We tighten the net. That night, in Las Vegas, Nuke was in heaven. Casino lights, music, shots. He posted footage of himself walking the strip, tagging himself in real time. That was the mistake. Because now, the feds knew exactly where he was, down to the block. By 1:47 a.m., he and Troy were headed back to their hotel suite just off Paradise Road when a patrol unit spotted their Escalade doing 20 over the limit. Routine stop. Blue and red lit up the rear view. Damn, Troy muttered. Again? Relax, Nuke said, checking the glove box. We clean. They weren't. The officer approached. License registration. Troy handed over the fake documents. The officer looked around, saw a stack of cash peeking from under the passenger seat. Mind if we search the vehicle? Nuke hesitated for a second, then said the line that would lock him in history. Go ahead. What they found? $47,000 in cash, wrapped in rubber bands. 7 EDD debit cards, each with a different name. A handwritten list of pins taped under the dashboard. 1 notebook containing names, addresses, dollar amounts, and withdrawal notes. The officer called it in. 2 plainclothes agents appeared within minutes. By 2:17 a.m., Nuke Bizzle was in handcuffs, pressed against the hood of the SUV. He turned his head toward Troy and whispered, Don't say nothing. They got nothing. He was wrong. They had everything. This wasn't a mugshot. It was the cover of a cautionary tale. 2:06 a.m., Las Vegas Metro Police Department. The holding cell smelled like metal and old sweat. Nuke sat alone on a cold bench, his wrists bruised from the cuffs, still wearing the same hoodie he flexed in on Instagram 12 hours earlier. He stared at the floor, replaying the last 2 hours like a broken loop. The flashing lights. The cash. The cards. The slow, deliberate words of the officer reading his rights. The moment Troy looked at him with that silent, "This might really be it," panic in his eyes. This wasn't county. This wasn't state. This was federal now. In another room, 2 agents sorted through the evidence with surgical focus. Rachel Fenton wasn't on site, but her team was. They laid the debit cards on the table like a deck of fraud. Each card matched a fake EDD claim sum already flagged, others freshly opened. Each withdrawal date lined up perfectly with ATM surveillance timestamps from LA Bakersfield and San Bernardino. It was a smoking gun, multiplied by 7. And the handwritten list of names and pins? That was the hammer blow. 6:17 a.m. Nuke's mugshot was taken. Eyes half-lidded, lips tight, the chains were gone, the belt, gone, the persona, cracking. He was now officially booked under Fontrell Antonio Baines federal detainee. Charges pending. He was allowed a phone call. He used it to call his manager. They got me, Nuke muttered into the phone. They found the cards, the Vegas trip. They saying it's all tied together now. His manager went silent. Then, they called me too. Your YouTube's been flagged by DOJ. Bro, they watching your whole career. Nuke hung up and sat in the silence. Back in DC DOJ headquarters, Rachel Fenton stood before a chalkboard, connecting lines like she was solving a murder. The map of Nuke's movements, ATM visits, fake addresses, and even song lyrics were color-coded and mapped in chronological order. She drew a red circle around a printed-out bar of lyrics from EDD. "You gotta sell cocaine? I just file a claim." "Do you know how many times we've heard this quote used in scam forums in the last 90 days? She said, looking at Langston. 12. They're treating it like gospel. This guy isn't just a criminal, he's an influencer. Langston leaned forward. Well, the influencer just got influenced into a cell. The 12th of March, federal criminal complaint filed. The Department of Justice moved fast. They charged Nuke with access device fraud, aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, unlawful possession of stolen government funds. In total, over $1.2 million in fraudulent unemployment claims filed using 92 different stolen identities. The complaint included photo stills from the music video, ATM surveillance images, and images of the debit cards recovered in Vegas. But the centerpiece? A full-page transcription of the EDD song's lyrics, footnoted with crime correlations. This was the first time in years a federal criminal case cited a music video as a confession. The 14th of March, news breaks. L.A. rapper Nuke Bizzle arrested for $1.2 million unemployment scam. Authorities say music video confession played key role in charges. Nuke Bizzle's flex turns into felony. TMZ picked it up. World Star ran the headline. Twitter exploded with memes. Imagine rapping about your scam, and then doing the time bar for bar. In holding, Nuke saw the news on a grainy television in the common area. Inmates clapped. Some laughed. One guy shouted, "Hey, that's you famous." Another said, "Man, you should have kept it off wax. Now they got you auto-tuned and indicted." Nuke didn't respond. He just stared at the screen. And for the first time, the weight of it all sank in. The cards, the flexing, the track, the lyric that once made him feel invincible. "I done got rich off of Ed," was now Exhibit A. The courtroom was colder than he expected. Not physically, but emotionally. No fans. No entourage. No label rep. No cheering crowd shouting lyrics from EDD. Just a federal judge, 2 U.S. attorneys with folders thicker than his rap career, and a quiet defense attorney flipping through pages like he already knew the ending. Nuke Bizzle Fontrell Antonio Baines stood in front of the court for his arraignment, hands behind his back, dressed in beige pre-trial detention clothes, the federal version of a reset button. The charges were read aloud, each one a hammer to the ribs. 1 count of mail fraud. 1 count of access device fraud. 3 counts of aggravated identity theft. And a government loss total exceeding $1.2 million. Nuke looked down, jaw tight. For the first time, there were no bars to hide behind, not the metal ones, and not the lyrical ones. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. A camera crew caught a 2-second clip of Nuke being escorted back through the courthouse basement tunnel. No comment. But the blogs didn't need one. Online reaction. Rap watch. Nuke Bizzle wrapped himself into a federal indictment. Legend or L? The fraud report. Doja drops full criminal complaint. Lyrics cited directly. This is unprecedented. Complex hip-hop. Court using music videos as evidence. Nuke Bizzle's case might change rap forever. Back at the Federal Detention Center, Los Angeles. Nuke's cell was small, but his thoughts were loud. Each day was a loop. Wake up. Count. Eat. Pace. Sit. Count again. He wrote in a cheap composition notebook, trying to rhyme out the stress, but it wasn't hitting like before. It wasn't confidence now. It was pressure. Then came the visit. His public defender sat across from him in a glass booth, eyes full of the reality Nuke was still trying to deny. "Fontrell, we need to talk options." Nuke leaned in. "They don't got me on no hard evidence. Just the video, right? Just lyrics." The attorney opened a file. Inside, printed ATM images, card registration data, video stills, fraud victim affidavits, and one deadly detail. A fingerprint from an EDD envelope shown in the music video, matched directly to Nuke. "They got more than a song," the lawyer said. They've got you linked to 92 different identities, over 700K in ATM withdrawals, surveillance footage, GPS pings, and multiple IP traces to your YouTube and Spotify accounts. He paused. Fontrell, this case isn't about whether you did it. It's about how bad it's going to get. Outside the walls, the feds were still building. Agent Rachel Fenton was finalizing their prosecution timeline. They wanted to make an example of Nuke not just for scamming, but for inspiring others to do the same. His video's been reposted by dozens of fraud channels, she told Langston. He didn't just break the law, he promoted it. Langston grinned. And now we're promoting him to federal inmate. Inside, Nuke had a decision to make. Fight a case backed by surveillance, card evidence, and his own lyrics. Or take a plea deal and hope for mercy. That night, in his cell, he reread his own lyrics from EDD in his notebook. 10 cards I'm swiping, 10K a day. He closed the book and whispered, "Damn, I really rapped my way into prison." The plea came wrapped in cold legal terms page after page of precise language, stiff penalties, and a number that made Nuke Bizzle flinch when he read it. 77 months. 6 years and 5 months in federal prison. No parole. Restitution required. Felony conviction permanently stamped on his record like a scar. He stared at the document across the table. His public defender was calm but firm. "They're giving you a deal. You plead guilty to 3 major counts: mail fraud, identity theft, and access device fraud. In exchange, they drop the rest. No trial. No risk of getting hit with 15 to 20 years. Nuke didn't respond at first. His eyes were scanning one line over and over. Admits to knowingly submitting fraudulent claims to the California Employment Development Department using stolen identities between May 2020 and August 2020. He licked his lips. "What if I don't sign?" The lawyer folded his hands. "Then we go to trial, but they'll bring in the music video, the surveillance, the IP logs, the fingerprint from the envelope, and worst of all, the victims." He slid a sheet across the table. Nuke blinked. It was a statement from a man in Fresno. One of the names on the cards. A retired warehouse worker who had lost access to his EDD benefits because someone filed in his name. "My lights got cut off. I was out of food. The state said I already got my money, but I hadn't. I couldn't figure out why until they told me I was a fraud suspect. Turns out I was just another name in someone else's hustle." Nuke looked away. And for the first time, the human cost of the hustle hit him in the gut. Later that night, in his cell, he stared at the ceiling, replaying it all. The bars, the applause, the envelopes, the beat. The way people cheered when he said, "You gotta sell cocaine? I just file a claim." He thought he was being clever. But what he really did was broadcast a blueprint. And the system was never going to let that slide. The 20th of April, 2022, U.S. District Court. Nuke stood before the judge, no longer hiding behind a hoodie or a hook. He was clean-shaven, worn, quiet. "I accept responsibility for my actions," he said, voice low. "I got caught up in money and clout. I didn't realize the damage I was doing, but I understand now." The judge nodded stone-faced, then read the sentence. 7 months in a federal correctional facility. Restitution in the amount of $704,760. Defendant is remanded into custody immediately. Gavel down. Just like that, the beat stopped. Outside, no fans waited. No cameras. No label scouts. No encore. Just a Department of Justice press release titled, "California rapper sentenced to federal prison after rapping. About $1.2 million unemployment scam in viral video." Back at the detention center, the news spread fast. Inmates clapped him on the back like he was a celebrity. "Yo, you a legend, bro. You really rapped yourself into a bid." But Nuke wasn't smiling. Not anymore. Because what started as a flex became a legacy. And not the kind he wanted. Victorville Federal Correctional Institution. High desert heat. Concrete walls. No stage. No lights. No hooks. Nuke Bizzle now inmate Baines, number 61,344 to 509S, tapped into his new reality with a plastic bin, a prison-issued uniform, and a locker smaller than his sneaker closet used to be. It hit him immediately. No music, no cameras, no internet, no second takes, just razor wire and regimentation. His first few days inside were quiet, too quiet. He avoided eye contact, took mental notes, watched how the tears moved. It wasn't violent, not yet, but it wasn't safe either. A prison is a market of stories, and Nuke's story had already arrived before he did. You, that Ed dude? Yo, spit that bar again, the one about 10K a day. Did you really do 92 claims? Why, you ain't just chill with the bread, man. Some clowned him, some admired him, others just wanted to see if he could be baited. He didn't respond to most. But inside, it was eating him alive. He wasn't famous in here. He was infamous. And that made him a target. Month 2. He got into his first fight. Nothing serious, just a bump in the chow line followed by a sharp elbow and a muttered, fraudulent rapper. He hit back. Instinct. Guards pulled him into solitary for 10 days. 10 days with nothing but walls and a mattress. He stared at the ceiling, counting seconds between the metal door slams. This wasn't punishment anymore. It was clarity. When he came out, something shifted. He started using the library. Started writing not for clout, but for sanity. Real bars, unfiltered. The pain of losing time. The guilt of the families whose checks he stole. The taste of cold metal from his first ATM pull. The sound of a beat that cost him 6.5 years. He called it bar for bar, the sentence. And it wasn't a mixtape. It was a memoir in rhyme. A few older inmates took notice. One, a lifer named Andre, handed him a notebook with 200 blank pages. You got something to say, he said. Say it with more than flexin'. Tell the truth. Tell the fall. And Nuke did. He wrote about the heat of chasing money and the cold of losing yourself in it. He wrote about the silence that follows a viral moment. He wrote about how every lyric now echoed like a sentence read aloud in court. Month 5. His sister came to visit. First time since the trial. They sat across the plastic divider. He picked up the phone. She stared at him a second before speaking. I still don't get why you had to brag about it. Nuke exhaled, pressing his hand to the glass. Because back then, bragging was the only way I thought people would see me. She nodded slowly. And now? Now, he said. I just want him to hear me. Every Friday, he joined the prison's creative writing workshop. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the deepest. But he was the most real. And when he read aloud a piece titled, This Sentence Rhyme, one counselor asked if she could submit it to a local prison art magazine. He didn't say yes right away. But eventually, he handed her the paper. It wasn't redemption. But it was the first verse in the right direction. By the time Nuke Bizzle hit month 6 of his sentence, one name kept resurfacing in conversations, letters, and even inmate gossip circles. Fat Wizza. The co-star. The collaborator. The other guy in the EDD video. Most rappers locked up for fraud would assume their partner in crime would be right there beside them or at the very least facing charges. But that wasn't what happened. Fat Wizza never got indicted. Never got arrested. Never even got so much as a subpoena. While Nuke was in a prison jumpsuit, eating bland chow hall food and doing commissary math with precision, Fat Wizza was out. Free. Active. And making music again. Word spread that Wizza had dropped a new single, titled, Feature Meant Nothing. The cover art? A blurry frame from the EDD music video, with his face visible and Nuke's blurred out. The message was clear. He had moved on. When Nuke first heard about it through a cellmate's brother on the outside, he laughed. Wizza dropped a track? Yup. Talking like it was all entertainment. He didn't even know it was real. Says he was just rapping about what the homie gave him. Nuke clenched his jaw. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how cleanly Wizza skated. A few days later, during rec, another inmate tossed him a printed-out Genius.com lyrics page. The lyrics were slick. I ain't claiming scams, I'm claiming survival. Didn't know the man was real with the files. I spit my verse, dipped out, that's facts. I ain't the one who left fingerprints on the stacks. There it was. A subtle cut, a clever dodge, and a final distancing from the mess that cost Nuke 6.5 years. That night, Nuke sat in his cell, gripping the lyrics page. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. He was done being angry. Instead, he picked up his notebook and started writing. I gave you 16 bars. You gave me 16 to life. Not behind steel but behind silence and a mic. I stood in the frame. You slid out clean. Said it's just a verse-na. It was part of a scheme. But I ain't bitter, Wizim, just wide awake. 'Cause real ones stay real, even when the walls break. He titled it, Wizza Wasn't With Me. A counselor later read the piece and asked him if he'd like to perform it for the prison's literacy showcase. Nuke thought about it, then nodded. But he didn't perform it angry. He performed it like a man who finally knew how much words could co-stand what they were really worth. Outside, Fat Wizza kept releasing tracks. He signed with a small distributor. Never once mentioned Nuke again. And in a way, Nuke understood. Clout protects the clever. But silence is a betrayal that echoes louder than any diss track. Time doesn't move the same in prison. It doesn't fly. It doesn't crawl. It just presses on you, quietly, until it bends you or breaks you. For Nuke Bizzle, the first year of his 77-month sentence was a war with himself. Not the feds, not the haters. Himself. The man who once chased digital fame, who stuffed stolen cards into a glove box, who thought a music video was just art not evidence. That man still lingered in pieces. But slowly, those pieces faded. The chains were replaced with silence. The beats with buzzers. The lyrics with letters. He spent most of his time writing now. Not bars. Letters. To victims. To his niece. To the man in Fresno whose life he'd unknowingly upended. One letter, sent to a local reentry nonprofit, read, I didn't just scam a system. I scammed myself into believing I was untouchable. The moment I rapped about my hustle, I turned a crime into a commercial. That's not legacy, that's lunacy. The organization published it anonymously under the title, When the Flex Becomes a Sentence. The piece quietly went viral in prison advocacy circles. In year 2, Nuke enrolled in business courses through the prison's education program. Irony didn't escape him. I faked being an entrepreneur, he told his instructor once. Now I'm learning how to actually be one. The instructor smiled. There's a difference between gaming the system and building one. Nuke nodded. Yeah, and one lands you in here. 3 years in. He started mentoring younger inmates. The same way someone once handed him a blank notebook, he now passed out dozens. I can't give you time, he'd say, but I can give you pages. He stopped writing songs about how much money he had. He started writing songs about what it cost him. Year 4. He was granted a 12-month sentence reduction for rehabilitation efforts, good behavior, and participation in restorative justice programs. It wasn't freedom, but it was forward. October 2027, Victorville, FCI. The doors buzzed. Fontrell Antonio Baines walked out in plain clothes, no gold chain, no camera waiting. Just sunlight and silence. A re-entry volunteer handed him a small bag with his belongings. A phone. A pair of headphones. A faded lyric notebook filled with 4 years of pages. His sister picked him up in a borrowed Toyota. They didn't talk much at first. Then she said, You know people still talk about that song. I know, he said, but I ain't gonna be remembered for it. She raised an eyebrow. Then what? He looked out the window. For what I did after the song ended. Fontrell moved into transitional housing in South LA. He took a job assisting with digital literacy classes for at-risk youth. He started a podcast sentence structure, where he interviewed ex-felons and broke down their stories into lessons. He didn't hide from his past. He taught from it. And that infamous music video? Still online. But with a pinned comment posted from an account named at Fontrell Rebuilds. If you're here to laugh, I get it. I laughed too once. But if you're here to learn, don't let your bars be the reason for your bars.